Okay, so maybe not the most optimistic injury update headed into the Giants game, as both Philly and New York are expected to be without some key starters. Although, despite A.J. Brown missing his second straight practice, we've got some reasons for hope. Plus, the Eagles appear to be changing up the CB2 spot with Adoree Jackson out. And Jordan Mailata had a strong message for the Giants. So let's talk about that, a couple other roster shakeups, and everything else around the Birds. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Got a couple interesting updates. We'll just say that around some injuries, which we'll get to, but first, let's start with the difference BG's making in the locker room. Because by now, nearly every defensive player has shared openly about how much the legend's presence coming back into the building has given everyone a boost. With edge Josh Uche being the most recent one, admitting the leadership and juice 55 brings on the field was something the team was definitely lacking.
I feel like he's hands-on, so to get him back in the field with us, back in the room with us, it's just like, man, it's like having a second coach too, like right there helping everybody out.
You got a chance to experience your first practice with him. We know he brings a lot of energy to practice. What did you see from that aspect?
Yeah, man, BG brings the juice, whether it's talking smack or whether it's just hyping the guys up or whether it's just bringing the energy, bringing the juice.
Well, considering the health of the current guys in the squad and also just the lack of depth that we have, I think it's just about a lock that BG plays on Sunday. However, as I'm probably going to say on repeat until we actually see the move, there's no fears that adding Graham is going to stop Howie Roseman from going after another edge. Of course, as I mentioned, I've done multiple videos over this the last couple weeks. I've pretty much talked about every single option. But for the record, you also had PHLY double down to suggest the Jets' Jermaine Johnson for what might be the most likely move for the Birds to make. Granted, I've also got a couple extra insights from Eagles beat writer Zach Berman about what he's feeling later in this video that might change your mind. Anyway, the win with BG is the fact that you're getting a guy who knows the culture already, knows how to motivate, and doesn't cost you a thing. Since yes, for those asking, Ian Rappaport revealed that the Philly brought back the 37-year-old on a one-year prorated contract worth $4.8 million. Which, hold on, doing the math, the proration there, that equates to $2.44 million along with a $1.68 million signing bonus.
Win, win, win.
Yeah, it basically doesn't affect the cap. But speaking of winning, listen up, important announcement here. Had a lot of you asking about this. Congrats to Donald Ruff. I think that's how you say it. It's RUGH for winning the 2 Eagles tickets via the randomized spinner. Donald, I just need to hear back from you. Either email me at thephillyspecialshow@gmail.com or DM me on one of the socials so I can confirm your info and know which game you want to go to. Of course, feel free in the comments section to weigh in on which game you think Donald should pick, because if we don't hear from him, it's only happened once this year, but if we don't hear from Donald, I'm going to give away the tickets to someone else in this video in the comments section, so feel free. Now, quick turnaround, I know, but I wouldn't blame you for picking this weekend's game versus the Giants. After all, it's Kelee Green week, and there's just something special about wearing those throwbacks. That's the reason the Birds are 4-0 since bringing them back a couple seasons ago. I mean, I was going back through the best Kelee Green moments from the past few years, and you can write it off as a coincidence if you want, but there's something about those games being electric with those kids. For instance, you had the first Kelee Green game in 2023 versus Miami, where even as poor as a defense as that was, they showed out and shut down the Dolphins. Or then later in Week 12, nobody can forget the insanity of the game against Buffalo. The torrential downpour with Philly storming all the way back and Jake Elliott nailing a 59-yard field goal to force overtime. That is before Jalen Hurts walked the game off with the winning touchdown run. That game was insane. I mean, I remember where I was. It's all these moments, but there's one in particular where you'll just never forget where you were, your reaction. So somebody asked me, what was the most iconic Kelee Green game? And it's without question the Jacksonville one.
Hurts looking right, going in the end zone. Saquon, Barkley got it.
Yes!
It's in. Touchdown,
Let's
Philadelphia.
go! Swing pass to Barkley, catches it, makes the first man miss, spins past the second to the 35, jumps over a Jacksonville Jaguars player and down at the 30-yard line. That was a what did he do? That was a backwards jump over a Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's see if we can get a Trevor Lawrence interception while you mention your buddy. Maybe jinx it. Trevor Lawrence over the middle, complete. It's picked off. He did it. We called it. Zach Vaughn. Did he catch it? He caught it. Time of left side. It's intended for John Dotson, and he what a catch. Oh, my gosh.
Jalen will take the snap. He's going to throw. 4-man pressure. Hurts steps up. Home run ball. Back right side of the end zone.
Oh, my gosh.
One hand, but I think he's out of bounds.
He caught it.
Touchdown. There's no
Oh,
way
my.
that.
You got to be kidding me. That's insane.
All they got to do is get a stop. 4-man pressure. Back goes Trevor. Looking left. End zone. That's going to be picked up. Jacoby Dean.
Jacoby Dean.
Yeah.
Basically 2 walk-offs out of 4 games. Not bad. Hang on, I'm not suggesting or wanting a walk-off game against the Giants, though, just for the record.
Quick, toss some salt over your right shoulder.
All right, call me crazy, but I'm still not buying into this whole Madden curse idea. Don't judge if you do, but it's just not me. Yet regardless, when it comes to the most iconic moments in Kelee Green, that's a foregone conclusion. Like, how could you not go with the backwards hurdle heard round the world? Which, by the way, if you want to immortalize that moment or take this piece home with you, put it up in your man cave or in your living room or wherever else you want, all you got to do is drop a comment on this video. So I'm going to take the one comment with the most likes on this video. Someone's going to get this piece by Jordan Spector of Spector Sports Art. So go ahead, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and then drop a comment below. Also, thanks again to Jordan of Spector Sports Art because I'll be giving away his art and new Immortals trading cards all season long, so keep tuning in to win. As always, best of luck to you guys, as I normally say, but also if you don't win or are looking to purchase from Jordan's site directly, you can use code JOSHD10 at checkout to get a discount. Back to BG real quick, it's impressive what this pass defense is doing despite the limitations they've had. I mean, Philly is a bottom 5 defense when it comes to sacks. Yet somewhat miraculously, Fangio's unit is still ranked 8th in terms of EPA versus the pass. AKA, the DC is definitely getting the most squeeze out of that side of the ball so far. Heck, the Eagles' defense has only allowed 7 passing touchdowns, which is second best in the league. Meanwhile, opposing quarterbacks are completing just 59.4% with a passer rating of 80.1, which are both 4th lowest in the NFL. And maybe the most impressive part of all that is the fact that then you look at Philly has played Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, and Baker Mayfield, who, 4 guys, all just so happen to be in the top 10 of the MVP race.
Hard to believe.
At the same time, I get it, just about every single game has been stressful, but Vic Fangio is a mastermind. Because even with the obvious flaws, the pass defense has held up incredibly well. Like, honestly, I was going back through those numbers, and it gave me pause because I'm like, we're doing this without a bona fide pass rush, any sort of really edge pressure. We're doing that, maybe some pressures, but not sacks. A definite concern and weakness at CB2. So can you imagine if we get those holes filled? Seriously, Howie's got to be licking his chops about what adding a crucial piece would do for this defense. Although, man, it's not surprising, but the only trade the national media wants to discuss is the one that is not happening.
Something is up there, whether it's the lack of production, them not throwing the ball enough, but then they go on the road. He has 4 for $120 something and 2. He has the game sealer. It's beautiful, the connection, and he still tweeted out. And so I'm not trying to read too much into it. This is a Super Bowl contending team, but for that to continuously happen, I do think that there's parts of A.J. Brown that would prefer to be traded and maybe traded to a place that is a little bit more pass-centric.
It's just the easy topic to throw out there at this point. Like, I know AJ's social media posts can be confusing or, heck yes, frustrating to some, but he loves to troll people and has stated that so many times that he also does not want to leave Philly. Anyway, the issues are not the drama on the offense or even near as much the passing game like it once was. It is 100% what's going on in the offensive line. Because as we've seen, and like Johnny Page pointed out, it feels like every run is a different lineman's mistake. One time Dickerson whiffs, the next time it's Mailata, then it's a tight end, everyone. Now sure, the silver lining is that at least Kevin Patullo shifted to more under center plays and outside zone concepts. Yet if the O-line can't get it figured out, it won't matter.
Whenever you're getting hit that early, it's offensive line or blocking related, right? Unless you just say like the worst play possible, but that is, I mean, even that doesn't hold up over a whole game, right? I thought they started out really well in the game. I thought they started out with like 8 of 12 of their first plays in the first drive or runs, and they were actually pretty effective. Then Cam went down and kind of started falling apart quite a bit. And I think that that's kind of been the way the whole season has been for the offensive line to date. I think that if you look at what happened with Andy's last year here, with a lot of part of why Doug ended up leaving, when the offensive line gets banged up, it's really, really hard to replace those guys, especially when you're used to operating with perennial All-Pro and Pro Bowl caliber guys the way we have for such a long time with Jeff Stoutland and the Philadelphia Eagles. Landon obviously was playing banged up. I actually think Landon looks back to the way he was playing before earlier in the season. I think you've seen that. The game before he went down with the ankle injury, I saw him redirecting and moving and playing back to his old self. Then he got the ankle injury. Then this last week, I thought he played really well.
Do we need Landon to be moving to center and have someone else to come in and be the guard on whichever side?
Yeah, I think that that's always an option because he's done both. In my opinion, you get more out of Landon at guard. Now, if center can't get figured out, and I don't know what the status is of Cam Jurgens. Obviously, they drafted Drew Kendall,
yeah.
right? They signed this Willie Lampkin kid from the Rams. So there's a lot of options at the center position. I don't know where they're at from like a health standpoint and what they'll do this week. But I do think Landon, he can play center. But because of his mass and his size, you affect more in the running game with the type of player he is at a guard position. So I'd prefer him to play guard. Now, they just signed Sua Opeta. I don't know if he's ready to go, and Sua's played a lot of good football for the Eagles before.
Oh, great.
Matt Pryor has played a lot of really good football at guard. He obviously didn't do great at tackle earlier this year, but I think that they're figuring that out. I'm actually optimistic once these guys get healthy that it will get sorted.
I'm hopeful, but my gosh, 7 weeks in and it's been bad. Like, no matter how you look at it, the Eagles are 27th in yards before contact per carry, 31st in stuffed run percentage, 24th in run block win rate, 25th in pressures allowed, and then also 19th in pass block win rate. In fact, you take away what Lane Johnson's been doing, and it would be so much worse. After all, despite not being quite as strong in the run game, he's at least been his typical self when protecting Jalen. I mean, take a look at the average time to pressure and pressure rate allowed for the entire league, and Pave the Lane is literally on his own island for how good he is. Something that Jordan Mailata did not do well on at all in the first Giants game, allowing a team-high 4 pressures.
For me, it's, I'm just feel like I played my worst game of my career 2 weeks ago, and, I wasn't happy with that. And so for me, it's just like, just got to, just go out there and do my job, do a better job than I did last time. But it's Kelee Green, so I'm excited about that. But at the end of the day, it's the next game.
What about it do you think made it your worst game?
I don't know. It just kind of was passive, very passive. So, yeah.
What did you learn from facing that front the first time?
Can't be passive.
I can appreciate him admitting that, but it's also time to see that aggression on Sunday. Because it looks like the Giants will have their full complement of weapons on the defensive line after Brian Burns said that he's going to play. Granted, it sounds like they'll be without multiple key contributors on defense in starting cornerback Paulson Adebo, starting safety Javon Holland, and rotational outside linebacker Chauncey Golston since none of them practiced. Anyway, switching gears to the Eagles, they also had a few concerns. 1, Cam Jurgens was not at practice dealing with a knee injury, and 2, neither was Azeez Ojulari, the hamstring, or Adoree Jackson dealing with a concussion. Meaning it's hard to imagine any of them will be good to play on Sunday. By the way, several questions on this, totally understand, but for those asking about center Willie Lampkin, he has been on the IR. Yet it was interesting to note that Ed Cracks pointed out that he did see Lampkin working on a side field to get some rehab with fellow rookie Cameron Williams on Thursday. Unfortunately, though, that probably still means he's a good ways off. And regardless, it looks like Jeff Stoutland is planning on Brett Toth to be the backup. Or at least if first-team drills meant anything, since that's who was in the starting spot at center. However, as concerning as that is, the biggest question mark and concern is that A.J. Brown did not practice for the second straight day. Although, at least he was getting in some rehab work on a side field. Now, perhaps a couple answers there in terms of just the injuries. Cornerback Jakorian Bennett was getting in work alongside Quinyon Mitchell and defensive back coach Christian Parker at practice. And then you had wide receiver Darius Cooper, who has been activated off the IR. Obviously, the hope is still that AJ's good to go. Remember, Jeff McClain of the Inquirer posted, back on Wednesday, that AJ, his understanding, would still be good to go for Sunday. 2 straight practices, you start to have a little bit more concern there. We'll keep you posted, but it is a little bit more alarming. The other side note, though, is at least you have Darius Cooper, who, remember, in training camp was marked or kind of labeled as like a mini AJ Brown. I don't know necessarily that it's like, hey, you quickly just from the IR straight onto the field, having to kind of rebuild those vibes with Jalen, but at least it's another weapon that's out there. Like I say, though, given all the uncertainty and lots of questions about what's going on, I figured let's talk to Eagles beat writer Zach Berman to get the full scoop.
When he wasn't at practice Wednesday, I was figuring, okay, this is early in the week, a maintenance day type thing. When you don't practice Thursday, your eyebrows get raised. And so we'll see how Friday turns out. If he doesn't practice Friday, I have a hard time seeing him playing Sunday. Just when you look at precedent under Nick Sirianni, there is a hamstring injury there, right? That's something that he didn't speak after the game. I imagine that when you don't speak after the game, typically there's treatment, especially when you have a good game, right? If you don't talk after a bad game, maybe the guy's frustrated. You don't talk after a good game. Sometimes you're going through treatment. So I'm curious to see the progress of this. I did point out that the Eagles started the practice window for Darius Cooper. And I don't want, your viewers or fans to think that I'm saying like Darius Cooper is a replacement for A.J. Brown. What I'm saying, though, is it's abnormal to start a practice window on a Thursday. Typically, you do that at the beginning of the week. So why would you do it on a Thursday, especially when the player is full? Darius Cooper was a full participant in practice. Well, it could be because you're saying, all right, we need to have depth for this game. So it could be trying to get that depth in order. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, they certainly have practice squad guys. They could have elevated as well. But I thought yesterday AJ would be good to go for this weekend. As of now, I'm not so sure.
Okay, that's my again, like the initial fear, see the report and all that, but you make a whole lot of sense there, and it's like, man, especially coming off the way the Vikings game was, naturally, the passing game firing on all cylinders, Jalen plays well, the perfect passer rating, all of that stuff. So obviously the hope is that AJ can go, but it's certainly a fair point. That being said, it's the Giants up this week. The running game has not obviously gotten going for forever now, but there's been some issues even in pass protection. And Jordan Mailata today, or I believe yesterday actually, spoke with you guys and had some interesting comments of kind of taking it personally. One of the worst games, if not the worst game of his career against New York last time 2 weeks ago. What were you making of just for this offensive line as a whole? I know Jordan's been kind of one of the more vocal guys, Lane included as well, but Jordan mostly on that side. What's up with the O-line?
I wish I could put my finger on it, honestly. And there's a handful of ways you can look at. This is a group that was beat up throughout the summer, and you saw that in training camp, right? They were never kind of fully healthy. Now, those guys are prideful players. I don't think they would use health as an excuse, but yeah, obviously there were guys who missed time during the summer. They haven't played up to the standard from the past few years. Now, I don't think they've been playing poorly. I just don't think they've been playing up to the standard from the past few years. I think that there have been some moving parts. Obviously, missing Landon Dickerson for a period of time, or a game, and then here and there. Jordan Mailata he's obviously missed some time. So Lane Johnson missed the game. So they haven't necessarily had the continuity that you might be looking for, but I don't know if that's an excuse. I wish I could put my finger on it. I've spoken to the O lineman, and it's the type of thing that I think some of it can be explained as a numbers game, and what I mean by that is they're facing stacked boxes. They're not seeing one-on-one as often, or maybe they're going 5-on-6 sometimes, things of that nature. So there's a handful of things you can look at from the numbers perspective. The reality is this team needs to have a top of the league offensive line in order to achieve its potential. And the way they're playing right now, the Eagles are 5-2 and among the favorites to win the Super Bowl. So I don't want to take that away from them. But I think to a man, they would say the O-line must play better.
Absolutely, yeah. Which the silver lining, as you say, they're 5-2, so you can't complain necessarily, like Jalen and others echo. But like Jalen Hurts says quite a bit, winning is the only thing that matters. So they're still getting results. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's fascinating to me as we're looking back. It's like combination of play calling, maybe some injuries, like you mentioned. But there's the players at the end of the day don't want to make excuses. Under center, we saw some more of that this past game against the Vikings. Do you get the feel, I think Saquon spoke today as well, do you get the feel that they're going to continue to try to go that route of some more under center plays?
I do. And, I think it's something that during the mini bye they looked at, and they thought that this was a direction they could go. You've seen the quotes from Jordan Mailata. You saw the production on the field. I think the O-linemen prefer under center. Now, Jalen Hurts, historically, they've wanted to be in the gun more. It certainly helps with the RPO game. I mean, I've spoken to quarterbacks in the past where it helps your field of vision, right? When you're starting a few yards back, you don't have your back to the quarterback your back to the defense at all in a play action or a drop back. So there's a lot of things to weigh there. And as Nick would tell you, and he's right, they've been a really good offense during the past few years, primarily as a primarily as a shotgun team. That said, they clearly need to evolve this year. There were things that weren't working in those first 6 games. We saw the benefit of going under center against the Vikings. You saw what it could do, especially in the play action game, that pass to Devontae, it would behoove them to continue to incorporate this. And the message that I kept hearing in the post-game locker room was that it makes you unpredictable, right? And it forces defenses to be a little more honest. And I think that's what the Eagles are looking for, is defenses to be a little more honest against them.
Be able to take advantage. I'm hoping for that. I know that a lot of people are. I've got to ask you though too, Zach, because and by the way, people should already be following. I know there's tons of followers on Twitter, on X, but if you're not, you're extremely missing out here for one of the best follows for any Eagles coverage beat writer, Zach Berman at ZBerm. So make sure you go do that. I got to ask you though, Zach, because the takeaway, and I know you've seen it in your tweet comments and probably all over the place as well, but the whole like, oh, it's 2023 vibes. Now that's somewhat died down after the Vikings game, but it's still fairly prevalent, right? But then you go a couple weeks ago and it was like, I felt like it was all over the place. Like, oh, it's 2023. And specifically relating to the offense, right? Because you got Kevin Patullo, Brian Johnson, the similarities, the new offensive play caller, first time and all of that. You're in the locker room though, and you see the difference again that we all can't see as far as just the players, the feel, the vibes, what they're saying, what maybe they're not saying. In that sense, because we could pick it apart like crazy, but just in the sense of the player vibes, the feel of this team, is it 2023 or does it feel different for a reason?
Well, first off, I never put validity to the 2023 comparison,
for sure,
because frankly, I thought the offense was pretty good in 2023. To be honest with you, I mean they struggled with turnovers down the stretch for sure, but I mean there was a period in October when AJ Brown was 100+ yards every game, right? I mean DeAndre Swift was a 1,000-yard rusher, Pro Bowl rusher. That offense, when you look at the advanced numbers, I mean they were a productive offense that year. Turnovers where they're undoing late in the year. The problem in 2023, I thought, was the defense, the defensive personnel, the defensive coaching, and so I don't view. I think obviously Vic Fangio's a world-class coordinator. We've seen that, and then I think the talent on defense is superior to the 2023 group. So I don't see those comparisons. I think if you're looking for any comparison, I frankly thought the 2024 Chiefs was probably a better comparison, in that a team that was winning games, but you're like, something's off here, right?
Yep,
I mean, they were really hot last year. I mean, they were undefeated for a long stretch, but it's like
I think they had the field goal block win also against Denver. So
exactly,
there's a lot of similarities. Yeah.
And even like, you look at the two Chiefs teams Eagles played in the Super Bowl, the 2022 Chiefs were just so much better than the 2024 Chiefs, even if the record was different. So I think that's kind of the comparison that I saw. You asked about the vibes in the locker room, and I know this might not be like a sexy answer to give. Like I try to be careful in that I'm in there every day, but I'm in there for 45 minutes every day. And like there's a lot that happens when I'm not in there. And I talk to a lot of people, but I also I mean, not to kind of get like preachy here, but I think that a big thing that reporters need to understand is that we're always operating from an information deficit. Like the information we don't know far exceeds the information that we do know at all times, and we're just trying to kind of chip away at that. But so that's kind of the preface for what I'm saying is I don't think that the vibes per se are like 2023. What I do think is this is a team that it didn't always seem quite right in there earlier this year, and I think Nick Sirianni talks a lot about joy, and there were times when they were winning games and it wasn't like especially joyful. And I don't necessarily think that's problematic. I just think it's like, all right, what are you doing to address this? And I think too, on the defensive side of the ball, there were, I don't want to say there was a leadership void, but it's a really young group. You were missing some key players from last year's team. So that I think they were trying to kind of find some voices there. But I was never an alarmist as far as the vibes per se. But I do think that like the AJ Brown situation, if you will, is something that understandably we need to continue to monitor. Like that there's, AJ hasn't quite been himself, I would say, seeing performance there. And so I think that overall, That's probably my biggest takeaway is they're still trying to find themselves, which is typical in September. But when you get to October into November, you want to have that identity.
Yeah, we're getting a little further along, which totally makes sense. I'm glad you mentioned, I mean, obviously the youth of the defense and talking about vibes in general. BG coming back, everybody, excited what it sounds like from the press conferences, the interviews, the players, all that's making, and how could you not? Because, it's the legend himself. But do you get a sense of even like just kind of an extra, you talked about joy, right? Because I mean, who better than BG? But do you get that extra sense of like, okay, BG's coming back? There's a little extra pep in everybody's step.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the locker room on Sunday when I was asking players about this, that's what you kept hearing is the energy that he brings. And Moro Ojimo had a good line. Is actually it was Jeffrey Lurie's line that some people are energy givers, some people are energy takers, and Brandon Graham is an energy giver. And Brandon, for full disclosure, he wrote the foreword for my book, right? So, I've known Brandon now. I started on the beat in 2012. He came in 2010, so he predates me, But I've known Brandon for 14 of these 16 years, and I do think that I've seen he has what he calls the juju, right? Where he has this certain way about him, where sometimes it's manufactured, but he does. He brings a certain spirit, a certain energy to that room. And I think that's always beneficial. Nick Sirianni has said it that every workplace can use a Brandon Graham. I certainly believe that's the case. I think everyone can use a little bit of Brandon Graham because, I frankly think people in the world will be a happier place if we all took that from Brandon Graham.
100%. I think that's honestly why, and people of the channel, I absolutely know this, but like Nolan Smith is kind of my like self-proclaimed guy, but whenever he was drafted, it was partially that reason, because I'm like, that it's just he's another type of guy, just the vibes, the energy, everything that he gives off there. So a big fan of that. Also, speaking of, because you did mention the book and I've got the copy here as well. This I cannot recommend enough to people of the channel. So go check it out. If you're wanting to get the best, most inclusive recap of last year's historic season, one of the best teams ever, you got to go check it out. There's a link in the description. So go get that. I'm also going to give one away, by the way, too, to people watching this. So all you need to do is comment leap year, right? So this is the title of the book, comment leap year right now. And I'm going to select somebody from the comment section that I will ship one out to you. So go do that, support Zach. And then you mentioned Zach, BG gave the forward, and I love it too, because he said that you are the person who writes with the most authenticity and the heart, I think is the way he described it, the heart and accuracy of covering the Eagles. So that has obviously, maybe the highest praise that you can get from a player, former player, back to now current player. But can you talk to us just a little bit about, the book itself, how the process of it? I'm sure because it took a while to compile and everything, but it's incredible as I've gone through it.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot. I'm sincere in that. It means a lot when you say that. This is my third book, and the first book I wrote was called Underdogs, and that was when the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017. The second book I wrote was The Franchise, and actually, to tell you the truth, that was a book deal that was kind of based on the Eagles potentially winning the Super Bowl in 2022. It obviously didn't happen. I kind of pivoted to a look on the last 25 years of the franchise, and then this one, Leap Year. And I bring that up as a way of saying that I'm fortunate to be covering like the most storied time in franchise history, right? I mean, if you think about this, for 51 years, the Eagles were in two Super Bowls in the first 51 years and did not win one. And then since Super Bowl 52, they've been there 3 times and they've won twice. So that,
not too bad.
I'm fortunate to cover this period of the history. And I also say that because like it's also given me a sense of how to write these kind of books. And so you asked about that. So the book itself, it takes you behind the scenes of the Super Bowl season. I'm there in the locker room, 3 days a week. I'm at the facility 6 days a week. I'm at the facility of the stadium 6 days a week. Or I should say 5 days a week, and then talking to Sirianni virtually the other day. So you have notes from throughout the year, and it's not just throughout this year. I mean, this book takes you from the time the red confetti fell in Arizona in February 2023 to the time the green confetti fell in New Orleans in February 2025. And I thought the collapse was the collapse of 2023 was an important chapter here because it really established, I think, a lot of what made last year special. And Nick Sirianni even said it. He doesn't know if they win last year without going through the adversity that they did in 2023. The first chapter here brings you behind the scenes in the locker room, right? Really trying to be a fly on the wall, use your senses. So, and it's not just what you see and hear, but the cigar smoke, what you smell. There's I'm not drinking the champagne or the beer, but they're spraying it all around you, right?
Yep.
So and I was at the post game party, and so really trying to be a fly on the wall to capture this moment for Eagles fans. And then there's the week by week chapter of the season. You can see how the roster was put together. You can see kind of how they put the coaching staff together. But really, there's also these cutaway chapters in there. There's 10 of them on 10 characters that really made this team special. And it's Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, Jalen Carter, Zach Bond, Darius Slay. I picked someone from each position group, and then obviously the coach and the GM. Mm-hmm. And these are people who I've gotten to know over the years. Some better than others, admittedly. But I've been in Nick Sirianni's childhood living room. I've sat with Jeffrey Lurie in his hotel room the week before the Super Bowl. The first time around, I've been at Jalen Hurts' high school. I was with Lane Johnson the night he got drafted. I can go on down the list. I mean, I really try to pull from my 14 years. Well, at the time I wrote it, 13 years covering the team and really giving that context. And the last thing I'll say on that is that you can go, when you do these books, you can go back after the fact and interview a bunch of people. But what I also found is that the in-the-moment memories, the in-the-moment chronicling of it is much more valuable. If you talk to someone about what the mood of the team was after the Tampa game in week 4 last year, it might be different if you ask them in February than if you ask them like during the bye week.
100%,
or the way,
yes.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of value in like the in the moment memories and recollections and the chronicling that I had, and I keep notes every single day. Fans might see that like I'm tweeting out these quotes. Part of what I'm doing is I'm transcribing these quotes every day, so I know when that I can go back and say, all right, on October 23rd, 2025, this is what Saquon Barkley said. This is what J.Alex Hunt told me. This is what Cooper DeJean said by his locker. And I do that every day during the season. So I have those notes organically throughout the year.
It's definitely it's noticed, and again, this is why I say you should already be following Zach at ZBerm on Twitter, on X. But I mean, people that see the channel, the quotes, everything else that I also get, it's predominantly from your quotes because you're typing them up and you're sharing, and it's insights on the team and everything else. But you make a great point because it's like that matter of perspective, and sometimes things seem a little bit worse than they actually were, or maybe they are, but then you kind of revisit it and it goes, oh, okay, yeah, so even last year in 2024, the Eagles were not a dominant team. Like, I think for me personally, it's like I remember it's like, well, yeah, we ran through people, in the playoff, the NFC Championship game, the Super Bowl was so dominant. But then you go back, and I love what this book goes through because again, it tells the full picture, gives the full picture and the full story of it. And there's things that I even had forgotten in it. I'm like, that's right. Like we were really, there were some dire situations, what felt like anyway, in the heat of the moment. And then you come through it. And like you said there, even with Sirianni from the first loss in the Super Bowl, it's that adversity to kind of push forward. So this team's been there, they've experienced it. And like I say, for those watching the video right now, make sure to drop the comment leap year, because I'm going to be shipping this out to one lucky subscriber. And again, I've got the link in the description if you want to go get a copy for those that do not get randomly selected. So, Zach, again, you're the man for that. I do have to ask you maybe a little bit in a joking fashion, only because I think there was a press conference where you asked Fangio a question and he kind of called you the I'm paraphrasing here to keep it friendly, but stirring things up just for things like that. And obviously he was joking in the sense, but I am curious because you even kind of alluded to this earlier. Like, how do you balance, obviously, having to build strong relationships with players, with coaches, all those that you talked about there, but at the same time, you're trying to get the bottom of what the report is, the information, getting all that out of the team or the players and whatever that is.
Yeah. So, look, the reality is, like, the Fangio thing was kind of funny because, like, there's much harder questions or that you're stirring.
Yeah.
And I was asking about his Denver years. I was doing a story on it was going into the Denver game and like how he's kind of evolved since the Denver years and shaped by those Denver years. But to your question, yeah, I mean, this is the reality of it, is that you're in that room every day, and you become a thorn in their side sometimes, but you also become like you're sometimes it's therapeutic for the players, sometimes it's annoying for the players. You have to ask questions that they might not like, but I think if you do it in a professional manner, I think the players understand it. And I also think the important thing is, like, if you're there every day, that's I don't think there's anyone in that locker room who would say that, like, I'm just creeping up on them when they have a bad play or when they have a good play. Like, it's all those days in between, and that's really like the value of beat reporting is like the constant chipping away, the constant grind, like seeing them. Nick Sirianni walking in and knowing that I'm going to be in that seat every day, and Jalen Hurts walking in saying, knowing I'm going to be in that seat every day, and like a point of pride. And this is a nerdy thing for me, but Doug Peterson leading into the playoff game against the Saints. So this was the 2018 season. All right, so January 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Peterson walks in, he looks there and he says, "Where's Zach?" And it was the day my daughter was born. I missed the press conference, but that's a point of pride because, like, Doug knew I was there. I was sitting there. And so, you're asking questions sometimes that frustrates them, that I've gotten on, I imagine, Nick Sirianni's nerves at times, and Jalen Hurts' nerves at times, and you go on down the list. But also, I think I have strong enough relationships with all of them or most of them that they understand where I'm coming from. And you try to I would also say that I know people, fans like to say, like, the Philly media, it's not like an organization, right? I mean, we're a collection of reporters. Every reporter has their own style. Every reporter has a different way of going about it. So I hope that these players, these coaches that I cover, have a sense of how I do the job.
There you go. And it speaks for itself, again, because BG said with heart and accuracy, with the best heart and accuracy of covering the team. So, again, kudos to you there. Okay, I will say, the last question before I let you go, I appreciate you again making all the time here. As far as, because the trade deadline is approaching, and I know the question continues to be, it's like, okay, edge, cornerback, is there a need there? You've had some tweets out there, and this is nothing of like reporting the Eagles or, hunting Dolphins players or anything like that, but you have said to keep an eye on Miami. So I'm curious, is there any extra insight there? Is it just kind of gleaning what's going on? Obviously Miami's not been playing very well, and there's other things within their press conferences, but anything specific that you can share to keep an eye? Is it still, just watch out for Miami, or even other teams that you would say keep an eye on? Yeah.
So look, I mean, you're trying to get a sense as you talk to people around the league of who's going to be available, right? And so obviously you look at a team that's struggling. Then you look at contract situations too. Bradley Chubb doesn't have guaranteed money on his contract after this year. Jalen Phillips is a free agent after this year, right? You look at connections. I mean, Vic Fangio coached Bradley Chubb in Denver and then in Miami. He coached Jalen Phillips in Miami before Jalen Phillips' injury. Under Fangio, he was really productive. So that's a situation that I said keep your eye on, because it just makes sense for a fit. You're always trying to find fits, and I think Howie Roseman has talked about something called the cohabitation matrix before. I don't know if he loves that's out there because it's kind of been teased about, but I think there's a lot of validity to it. Like it's I think Howie sometimes he needs to understand that, like, even if something's a punchline on social media, like if there's validity to what he says, the quarterback factory makes a lot of sense, right? He shouldn't be ashamed of saying that. The cohabitation matrix makes a lot of sense, and that you're seeing who in the building has exposure to that player. Is it someone who have you coached them? Have you drafted them? Because when you trade for someone in the middle of the season, and history's shown it doesn't always go well for the Eagles. If you have that sense of familiarity of how they'll adjust, will there be a scheme adjustment? Will there be a locker room adjustment? What's their age curve? These are all things you need to account for. So I had a piece on The Athletic a few weeks ago, or I should say 2 weeks ago, a mailbag where people were asking for candidates. And I also mentioned Draymond Jones, who, in Tennessee, but he's someone who played for Fangio in Denver. A little different role. Wasn't as much an edge guy when he played for Fangio. He's actually more of like a Milton Williams type then. When he went to Seattle, he kind of morphed more into an edge guy, and he's an edge guy now. But that's a team that could potentially be sellers. If Jermaine Johnson were to get moved, he would make a lot of sense for the Eagles. It would be more costly. I saw a report as I was driving home from work today that Jermaine Johnson said that Jets management told him he wasn't going to be moved. But I still think edge rusher is a spot to watch closely. I think it's a need, not just this year, but long-term for the Eagles. I think that the Eagles thought they would come out of the draft with an edge rusher earlier than they did. They got Pal Ryland in the 6th round of the draft. And I think that's probably a spot that, we know they were looking at edge rushers, on day 1 and day 2. It's just the board didn't fall that way. So So I think short-term and long-term, that's a position they could add. I know corner is a position that fans are real curious about. I wouldn't rule them out adding a corner. They made that trade for Jakorian Bennett. They gave up a player they liked, Thomas Booker, to get Jakorian Bennett. Jakorian Bennett has term on his contract, has starting experience. I think he's a player who the Eagle, he could potentially be back on Sunday. I would watch him factoring into the mix. If I were Howie, I would look to trade for a slot and play Cooper DeJean more on the outside. I don't think that's something that now. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think the coaching staff wants to do that.
It's fair.
But this is me talking. Like, me giving my opinion is Cooper DeJean is one of the best football players on the team. I think he'd be a really good outside corner in addition to slot. I would use him the way the Ravens have used Marlon Humphrey in the past. I wouldn't just use him on the outside and base. If there's matchups where you're facing two really good outside corners, I would have Cooper DeJean on the outside, and then I would have maybe like a Roger McCreary or someone like that in the slot. I don't think the Eagles go in that direction. I know, depth tight end is a spot that fans are curious about. I wouldn't rule out adding a depth tight end. They don't have a tight end under contract beyond this year, I believe, but I'm not sure that's going to be a real priority. I think that's more of an offseason push. And then finally, fans are asking about offensive line. I don't see the Eagles making a trade for an offensive lineman. They traded for Fred Johnson before the season. They have young guys they're developing here. They have 4 offensive linemen who are paid near the top of the league at their positions. And so I think they're going to roll with what they have on the O-line.
You just got to get it figured out. Get the continuity or don't play with passiveness, like Jordan Mailata was saying in his last breakdown with the media. Okay, well, that is interesting. Also, but I should say, shout out to you, because I think even before the draft, if I'm not mistaken, you were already kind of not sounding the alarms necessarily, but like saying the Eagles should probably do need to make a move for edge. And lo and behold, we're much further into the season now. And it's like, it would have been nice to have that edge rusher. So we'll see. We will see if there's anything up to date. Obviously, as I've said many times here on this recording, go follow Zach at ZBerm on Twitter, on X. If anything breaks, there's any news, obviously Zach's on the beat, so you want to be the first to know. Go do that, one of the best, and make sure to pick up the copy. Again, Leap Year, the link is in the description. Zach, I appreciate you coming on. This was a blast.
Absolutely, anytime. Thanks for having me.
There we go. Alrighty, appreciate it, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you. Go Birds.